This week, one company put out a sales forecast that was just a little lighter than Wall Street wanted, and within 2 days, it erased hundreds of billions of dollars across the entire chip sector and overseas. The company was Broadcom. And here's the wild part. Most of the companies that got hammered didn't do anything wrong. They didn't report bad news. They just happened to stand next to the one that did. Now this looks like a stock market story, something for the finance channels. It isn't. Underneath it is the single most overlooked risk in small business, the one that can take you down even when you did everything right. If your revenue leans on one big customer, one supplier, or one platform, this episode is about you. Stay with me. So let's start with what actually happened, because the size of the reaction does not match the size of the news. Broadcom is one of the biggest AI chip companies on Earth. This week, they told investors they expect about $16 billion in AI chip sales for the quarter. Wall Street was hoping for closer to $17.2 billion. That's it. That's the whole crime. They didn't lose money. They didn't miss a payment. They made a fortune. They just made a slightly smaller fortune than people had penciled in, and they didn't raise their forecast for the rest of the year. For that, the stock dropped about 14% in a day. Billions of dollars in value, gone, over a forecast that was still enormous. Now here's where it gets interesting, and where the lesson really starts. Broadcom's bad day didn't stay at Broadcom, it jumped. Micron, the company that makes memory chips for AI, dropped around 7%. Intel fell about 8%. AMD fell about 8%. And here's the key detail. None of those three companies reported any bad news of their own. Nothing. No miss, no scandal, no warning. They got punished purely for standing in the same neighborhood as Broadcom. That's contagion. When everyone is wired to the same story, in this case the AI boom, one company's wobble becomes everybody's problem, whether they earned it or not. And it didn't even stop at our border. Look at South Korea. Their main stock market, the Kospi, fell about 5.5% in a single day. Samsung dropped more than 6%. SK Hynix, another giant memory maker, fell almost 10%. These are enormous companies on the other side of the planet, and they got knocked down hard because of a forecast from one company in California. Think about how far that domino traveled. One firm guides a little soft on a Wednesday, and by Friday, a whole country's stock market is in the red. That is what concentration looks like at full scale. Everything is connected to the same engine, so when the engine coughs, the whole machine shakes. So here's the real lesson, and it has nothing to do with chips. This whole week is a giant flashing example of concentration risk. When too much of something depends on a single point, a single company, a single sector, a single story, then one wobble at that point travels everywhere, fast and hard. Wall Street just watched it happen to a $1 trillion industry in real time. And here's the thing nobody on the finance channels will tell you. The exact same risk is sitting inside your business right now at your scale, and it is almost certainly uninsured. Let me show you your version of Broadcom. Every small business has a Broadcom, a single point that everything else leans on. For one of you, it's that one customer who makes up 40% of your revenue. Lose them, and you're not trimming, you're laying people off. For another, it's a single supplier, one factory, one distributor, one importer, and if they stop, your shelves go empty. For somebody else, it's a platform. Your whole business runs through Amazon, or one general contractor who feeds you every job, or one referral source that sends you most of your clients. That single point is your Broadcom. And the question this week is asking you is simple. If that one point wobbles, does your whole business shake? For most of you, the honest answer is yes. Let's take those one at a time, starting with the most common, customer concentration. If a single client is a third or even half of your revenue, then you are Micron in this story. You're the company that can have a perfect year and still get crushed because something happened to somebody else. If that big customer hits a rough patch, loses their own biggest account, gets bought, or just decides to cut spending, your income falls off a cliff and you did absolutely nothing wrong. Their bad quarter becomes your bad year. That's the position those chip stocks were in this week, falling on news that wasn't even theirs. The difference is they're publicly traded and diversified. You might have everything riding on that one relationship. The second version is supplier concentration, and this one hides even better. A lot of businesses depend on one source for the thing they can't operate without. One factory that makes your product, one distributor that stocks you, one software platform that runs your scheduling, your payments, your whole operation. As long as that source keeps humming, you never think about it. But if it shuts down, gets hit with a cyber attack, jacks up prices, or just disappears, you stop cold, no matter how healthy your own books look. You become the downstream company that fell 8% on somebody else's bad news. Single source dependency is a tripwire most owners don't even know is stretched across their floor. Now let me make this local, because there's an angle here that hits closer to home than people realize. This whole sell-off was about one question. Is the AI spending boom going to keep going at the same pace? And a lot of money right here on the Gulf Coast is quietly riding that exact wave. Think about all the construction tied to data centers and the power and cooling they need. The electricians, the HVAC crews, the equipment suppliers, the concrete and steel guys, the contractors feeding that build-out. When the market gets nervous that AI spending might slow down, that nervousness eventually reaches the budgets of the companies doing that work. If the boom funds your customer, then the boom is your risk too, even if you've never bought a single chip. So here's the part that surprises almost every business owner I talk to. There is insurance built for exactly this kind of domino, for the loss you take when somebody else's problem rolls downhill onto you. And almost nobody buys it, because almost nobody knows it exists. Most owners just assume that if a big customer or a key supplier blows up and takes their income with it, that's tough luck, the cost of doing business, nothing you could have done. That's not true. There are 3 specific coverages that speak directly to concentration risk, and I want to walk you through all 3 so you can ask about the ones that fit your situation. The first one is contingent business interruption. Now you may already know about regular business interruption coverage. That pays you when your own building is damaged, say a fire shuts you down, and it covers the income you lose while you're closed. Contingent business interruption is the downstream cousin, and it's the one that matters here. It can respond when a key supplier or a key customer gets hit by a covered event, and the loss rolls downhill onto you, even though your own doors are wide open. It's built for exactly the position those chip stocks were in this week. Perfectly fine themselves, but hammered because of what happened to somebody they depend on. If you've got real concentration, this is the conversation to have. The second coverage is trade credit insurance, and this one is a quiet lifesaver for any business carrying a big customer. Here's the scenario it solves. You do the work, you send the invoice, and before they pay you, that big customer goes broke, files for bankruptcy, or just stops paying. For a business where one client is a huge chunk of revenue, an unpaid invoice that size isn't a bad month, it's an extinction event. Trade credit insurance can pay out when a major customer defaults or goes insolvent, so their collapse doesn't drag you down with them. If you've ever laid awake thinking about what happens if your biggest account stops paying, this is the coverage that answers that exact fear. The third one builds on the first. It's the dependent property piece, and the key idea is that you can name names. With the right endorsement, you can list the specific supplier or customer your business absolutely cannot operate without, and schedule them right onto your policy. So instead of a vague hope that you're covered, you've pointed at your single biggest point of failure and said, "That one. Cover me if that one goes down." It turns the hidden dependency that's been sitting quietly in your business into something explicit, something on paper, something insured. The whole game with concentration risk is dragging it into the light, and this is the coverage that does it. And here's the gap that ties it all together, the one that bites people. Most standard business interruption coverage was built around physical damage to your own property, a fire, a storm, a pipe bursting. The policy wants to see something break that you can photograph. But a customer's bad quarter doesn't look like a fire. A supplier going dark doesn't look like a storm. A platform suspending your account doesn't look like a burst pipe. None of this week's kind of damage fits the old mold, which is exactly why a standard policy quietly says no when you file. The financial domino is real, it's expensive, and the coverage for it lives in those specialty endorsements we just talked about, not in the basic policy most owners assume covers everything. So here's a 30-second exercise I want you to actually do, right now, in your head. Picture your single biggest customer, and picture your single most important supplier or platform. Now imagine one of them is simply gone on Monday morning. Out of business, account frozen, contract canceled. How many weeks could your business survive on what's left? For a lot of owners, that number is uncomfortably small, and they've never once said it out loud. If your answer scares you even a little, congratulations, you just found your Broadcom, the single point that can shake everything. And that fear is the start of a coverage conversation, not a reason to lie awake. So before you click off, here are the 3 questions to take into one short conversation. 1. What percentage of my revenue comes from my single biggest customer? If you don't know the number, that itself is the warning. 2. What one supplier, platform, or partner can my business simply not operate without? Name it. 3. If either of those disappeared tomorrow, am I actually covered for that loss, or am I just exposed and hoping? Those 3 answers take one short call to get, and getting them now, while everything's calm, is a whole lot smarter than learning them the way the chip sector learned them this week, all at once, with no warning. My name is Dennis Hendrickson. I'm a licensed insurance broker in Sarasota, Florida, and a big part of what I do is help business owners find these single points of failure before they fail and put the right coverage behind them. Contingent business interruption, trade credit, dependent property. If you've got real concentration in your customers or your suppliers, and most businesses do, it is worth 15 minutes to map it out and see what's actually covered. My contact information is right down in the description, and the first conversation doesn't cost you anything. If that was useful, do me a favor and subscribe. Every single day we take a real business and AI story and break down what it actually means for you and your bottom line. The practical version, not the hype. One company's forecast shook an entire sector this week, and a market on the other side of the planet, all in 2 days. Make sure your business isn't sitting one wobble away from the same kind of fall. I'll see you tomorrow.